I wanted to ask you about was that portion wherein you mentioned that you started to be in the rebellious spirit a bit, and you had seen things from your dad that you were like, that's not something that I want to be a dominant part of my life. And I think that's so relatable to a lot of guys, like, because in so many ways, fathers have, like, between Family Guy and American Dad and The Simpsons and even all kinds of new shows, like, the dad figure typically is made to look like somewhat of an idiot. So like a dislike for fathers is kind of prominent in media. And then the culture of like, oh, you're gonna be a bum dad that lives like her. So like there's like we're kind of all primed to it. So I was curious, and you can share what you're comfortable with. Where did that sense of like what was it that you saw in him at that time, which I know was a long time ago, probably now things are very different. But at the time, what was it that you saw that made you say, I don't really want any part of what you're doing because of X, Y, Z?
So it really boils down to, it's almost in some instances like he just had two different personalities. So there was an upright, upstanding businessman church dad that always wanted to do the right thing, and nobody's perfect. Always wanted to do the right thing and always tried to instruct his kids to do the right thing. But the flip side of that was, as I got older, I just saw him as a human being. I saw him at times that was angry and didn't steward his money very well. And just, you get to a point where it's like, well, part of it was me being rebellious. I'm not going to say all this was on my dad, so please don't hear that. But it just was like, okay, well, if you say Jesus is all these things and we should be like Jesus, why are you not like that when you're around us? And I just didn't like it. I didn't like the instruction. I didn't like the discipline side of it. It's like, okay, it's so funny because I'm a metalhead, and I always had wanted forever, because my dad he grew up listening to Led Zeppelin and all that rock. I thought, okay, growing up, here I am, I like Metallica, Pantera, some of the other bands, and like we could never share that for whatever reason. I don't know. It's like, hey, dude, you grew up listening to this. Why can't we both listen together? It wasn't until years later where he's like, hey, you ever heard this song by Metallica? I'm like, dude, come on.
Oh, wow.
Like, you ever heard that song Battery? I'm like, dude, I've been listening to that. I remember listening to that song in the early 90s, playing Sonic the Hedgehog on my Genesis with Metallica blaring. But anyway, so like we didn't have this opportunity to share that. Well, your music is satanic, and like, I'm like, okay, I'm just done with this. Like, you tell me to be this, you're not this, I'm just not going to do it. So it just, and I just was a rebellious teenager. I didn't want to put my focus where it needed to be. And I wanted to hang out with my friends all the time. And we just argued about it. And I just got to the point where I just was not going to do what he wanted me to do, which is tough because now I got two boys. And one of them's a giant, so what do I do with that? So that's really where that came from.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense there. Do you think that if you had seen the consistency in public persona and private persona, that may have changed your response to like what you felt about and your acceptance of your faith at that time?
It probably would have helped, yeah. It probably would have been helped. And my dad was an old school dad where, it's like, it's so funny. You talk about, TV shows and they portray dads as dolts and idiots a lot of times, which kind of offends me a little bit because we're not that way. But if I would have seen a little bit more consistency, it probably would have. And maybe if he wasn't upset all the time, maybe it would have changed some things. But I don't know. I was a rebellious idiot in my teenage years. I just was, dude. Like, there's no other way to word that.
So maybe like, as much as he wanted to be in the spirit, he couldn't always be in the spirit.
Yeah. Fair enough.